Thank you for the invitation. Let's dive in. So before we start, I want to ask everyone watching to get a pen and a piece of paper. Just while I'm doing the first slide and two, I have a small assignment for you in a minute. So please go ahead and get pen and paper. So today, I thought I'd talk a bit about AI and UX, right? In our daily work, we tend to focus on the things that are urgent, that are really in front of us during the day, the deadlines that we have to catch up to, and sometimes we tend to go towards the urgent and forget about the important. Things that are urgent can also be important, but the important stuff we kind of tend to let it slide if it's not urgent, right? And this is one of those things that I think is incredibly important and increasingly urgent. I will not be giving any answers so far. That's a promise. But I'll try to point at a couple of challenges that I see and that I've encountered that are still somewhat unsolved. And I think that you and I, the UXers of the world, we are part of the solution. So please listen to this chat, to this talk, if you have the time for it. And then please also join the Q&A session afterwards, because I would love your input on these themes. Okay, so by now you should all have pen and paper, and I'll give you a small assignment. So on the paper, put down the biggest challenge in your life, right? Don't make it a black-white challenge, and make it a complex one. And this can be at any scale, right? If you say, I want to solve climate change, that's okay. If you want to say, well, I want to solve political polarization, we had that earlier today as well. Or if you want to make it about your career, right? How can we facilitate change in my organization? Or you can even make it personal, right? What should be my next step? Put down a specific challenge as well as you can in your life. Okay, so while you're doing this, I'll talk just shortly about decisions. When we make decisions, we often base them on predictions, right? We try to imagine the impact that a certain choice will have, and we kind of try to imagine the change that we will have to go through to get to this point. And when we encounter things that we don't know, we try to kind of bridge it with best guesses or statistics or historical evidence, right? If I once put my hand on a hot stove, I won't do it again. But if I get into the kitchen in the morning and it's cold and the stove was off the whole night, I would probably put my hand on the stove without hesitation. So these predictions we make are based on data analysis. We have input, which is raw data and the historic part. We have some processing, which is for us human, it's learning. And then we had the outcome, the decision, right? And the challenge in all of this is complexity. So when we ask a computer to calculate the prediction of the weather in Hamburg today, it's pretty accurate. We can kind of count on that. We have live data to support it. But the further into the future that we go with these predictions, it kind of gets a little foggy. It's not that precise. Maybe they say it's going to rain in 6 days and then it's sunshine and great weather. But when we're talking about AI, the systems that we are negotiating with are getting faster incredibly at an incredible rate. From 2012 to 2018 alone, the speed of AI processing doubled more than 300,000 times. And the fastest AI that beat the best Go player in the world, AlphaGo, that was in 2018. And since then, the computing processing power of these AI systems have doubled every 3.4 months. So that means that the best computer in the world that completely revolutionized how we thought about AI, it's actually become 128 times faster since then, 2018. And by the end of the year, it's going to be more than 250 times faster than when it beat the best AI Go player in the world. So AI is becoming faster and faster at a rate we just can't grasp. So let's now imagine you have your personal challenge on this piece of paper. Imagine if we put your challenge into a computer and it calculates everything, right? It takes everything into account, human psychology, politics, economics, general domain-specific things, local knowledge. It maps your neural pathways and the air humidity and every conceivable factor that we can think of. It takes data as far back as we have recorded data, and it integrates also the live data happening as it's calculating. And at the end of this, it gives you a definite answer, right? Just a clear, this is what you should do to solve this challenge. And that's kind of the setup for my talk today, right? How can we trust a system like that? What happens if the answer is not what we expected it to be? Can we even use a definite answer, and what kind of factors are at play? And my focus will be on how user experience can help create these natural interactions with AI. So, of course, there's a lot of factors at play, right? If we just start with the AI, there's a whole challenge of getting clean, usable data. That's a big challenge for many companies. Then there's understanding the data and programming the logic, defining what thing you want to solve. That's a really big challenge. But those are not UX challenges. UX challenges, they enter during the process, right? So this is about human-machine interaction and transparency and the psychology of decisions and the complexity of systems and organizations, and it's about habits and limitations and all of these weird things. And I'm going to focus on 3 things today that I've observed and that I question, and that I would love to have your feedback on as well, because I'm at a loss on some of these things. The first one is the process itself. Computers are great at computing, right? They're great at calculating, but they're not so great at showing us the process. First of all, because it's all ones and zeros. And second of all, because it happens so fast, right? We're talking about trillions of computations every second. It's incredible. But everything from there on, most of it can be kind of steered by user experience design. That's my thoughts, at least. We actually, Rolf spoke about this, right? The first user interfaces made by Xerox kind of looked like the user interfaces we have today on our laptops. There was a desktop, there was like file icons, there was like folder icons, and you can choose a file and put it into a folder. And you all did this with a mouse cursor. And when you told the computer to do something that was kind of computational tricky, that would take a bit of time, it would show you this, right? It would give you an hourglass to show, I'm working on it. This is going to take just a little bit of time. And depending on what you ask the computer to do, this icon would be there for a second, 2 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 4 minutes, 50 hours, depending on what you told the computer to do. But that's a pretty, well, it's not really the best user experience you can imagine. Happily, a couple of years after, something entered that we all know and love, this, right? The progress bar. It's exciting. You can follow the progress. You can kind of estimate when it's done. But there's also some downfalls. First of all, I see the speed of this, and I think, okay, I'm not going to make a cup of coffee before it's done. But then at some point, it might stop there for a while, which actually prompted some companies to make the loading bar load slower starting, to surprise people at the end how fast it was happening. So by the time it was halfway through, it was actually 70% through the calculations. And that's one way of doing it. But if you have a complex system, a more complex system, and you want to integrate the user, because this is good for a minute, right? But if this is on your screen for 3 hours, you're not really sure if it helps you know what the computer is doing. So today you actually see some of these as well, which are kind of showing you exactly what the computer is doing in the background, and gives you this feeling of, oh, I understand. If I had to do all of this manually, it would take longer time than it will take you. So I'll leave you to it and you just do it. And this we actually see all over the place still. If you open the Uber app, it will show you where the cars are. If you click pick me up now, it'll show you the progress with the car when it's there, right? As Rolf said, we want to know when the package arrives at our front door. So this is actually the progression through these loading stages. And I think that this is a good role model for what we need to do with AI. We need to move people from the knowledge of the system is doing something to showing it what it's doing and why it's taking time. But that's the first paradox, I think, because you could say, okay, so transparency is simplicity, and we need both of these things, and we need to integrate them in every system. But when the computers become more powerful, it might create a paradox. So you have your challenge on the piece of paper, and if I told you one of the factors is all of the memories and learnings and connections that you've made in your life, and we processed that in 1.6 seconds, right? There's something playing against our egos as people. You can't do that in that speed. So I think that's a really interesting thing that we need to stay aware of and keep our eyes on as we develop future systems for AI. Okay, so second thing I want to talk about, the solution bending. I think it's a challenge to break down solutions into the smallest possible pieces. What is a challenge? What is a solution? We do this all the time, actually. Back in the old world, when you could have physical workshops, we often did this. Divide a group into 2 groups, right? And then you instruct the one group to create challenges, right? Just write down as many challenges concerning this process or project that we're doing, and put them on paper and try to come up with as many as you can. The other group, you tell them, the first group I instructed to create challenges. You will not know what they come up with, but I want you to create solutions, right? So there's 2 ways you can go around this. The first way is to think about what challenge would I have created, and then how can I create a solution for that, which is the roundabout way. Or you can just start, right? A solution is spend more money on it. That's always a solution. Or put more manpower on it. Or we need to restructure our organization. Or maybe we could get in external experts. There's a lot of solutions that can fit a lot of problems. And that's exactly the point, right? Because one thing we see continuously when we bring these 2 groups back together is, first of all, we almost always have more solutions than we have challenges, which is an incredible thing to witness in most companies today. And the second is, for every challenge we put on the table, there's multiple solutions, right? And we see this all the time as well with AIs. It's the GPS that tells us, well, you could go this way, or you could go this way, or you could take the scenic route, or you could avoid the highways, right? You get the choices, but they all lead you to the same place. So in other words, it's not about finding the correct solution, right? It's about sometimes finding the different solutions, finding out what are the amount of solutions that we could create for this challenge. Sometimes the road less traveled is the right one, and other times we just want to get there fast. How can we cut corners, right? There's a lot of solutions in there. And that's the second point. We need to create solutions instead of creating solution. And I think the challenge for us as UX people is to create environment where customers and clients and our organizations can accept multiple solutions and figure out what's the right one for them. And lastly, I thought I'd talk about a bit about the art of discovery. I think the first talk this morning spoke about this, right? The bottom line. How do we see the results? How can we deliver those numbers for companies? And business tend to focus on outcomes, right? What's the result? What's the bottom line? And so far, we've been talking about how can we as UX people present the solution. But I think at the core of user experience design is also a mandate to look at how we get there. And that's, I think, a really interesting thought. So spoiler alert for anyone who doesn't know this kind of arithmetic calculus, there will be an answer on this very difficult calculation on the screen. My point here is historically predictions were based on data, but with AI that grows really powerful, really fast, it'll also be based on system acceptance. A correct answer is not good unless I know how you got that, right? It can seem easy, but it's not. It really isn't. So this is an easy math question, right? 1 + 1 equals, and I'm going to reveal now. So if you don't know it and don't want to know it, just pause your video for 15 seconds. It's 2, right? And this is not hard. But if I ask you to explain me why it is like that, you can say, well, if you have one of something, right, and you have another one, and you put them together, you have 2, because that's how numbers work. And that's good and well, but that's because we live in the physical world where there's things, and things come together. If you need to explain to a computer how to do this, you actually have to look into the Principia Mathematica, which is a book from the 1912, I think. Alfred Whitehead and Bertrand Russell, and they created this. This is the proof of arithmetical addition and how it works. And if you follow this formula, it follows that 1 + 1 = 2. This is the proof that 1 + 1 = 2. And of course, this is abstract. And we as people don't need to know this, but machines do, right? So let's go back to your biggest challenge and look at it. And if I deliver you a solution and say, this is the final decisive solution, and you ask me, well, okay, but how did you arrive at that? And I tell you, well, these are the data that we processed, and it took in all the factors, and it computed the likely outcomes, and that's why. That's not going to help you unless you're a programmer, right? And that's like the arithmetical proof that 1 + 1 = 2. You need to know the language before you understand it. And as UX designers, it's our responsibility, and our capabilities allows us to translate between the system and the people. So we need to not only generate the solutions, but help people understand the systems and how the systems score these solutions in a way that people understand. So we create the systems that create reality in the future. And the future is getting closer very fast. I think this is a theme that is interesting and important now, but it's becoming more and more urgent. So my question is, how can we as UX designers, as UX people, as people who understand that machines are machines and people are people, and we need to work together, all of us, how can we set out to find solutions, and not only find the correct solution, but solutions that you as a challenge person, the people with the problems, solutions that you like and that you can act on, that you can test, and that you can explain to others. It's very interesting, because I think the three core skills that you need to this is process insight, it's challenging of outcomes, and it's the explanation of findings, which is all really core things to the UX skill set. Sure, we won't solve this by ourselves. We need psychologists and engineers and programmers and ethnographers and geologists and weather people to solve all these challenges. But one thing that I'm very sure of is that we need to start before it's urgent, because at the time it will be urgent, it will be too late. So my hope is that you will help us too. So join the conversation in the Q&A. I'm aware that I'm about a minute early done, but I don't want to waste your time more than I need to. So thank you very much. I look forward to see you in the Q&A.